I have 4 girls, and I watch them like a hawk. Never in my wildest dreams, never would I have thought that anything like that would have happened to my son.
Well, that's the stereotype, right?
I know.
Girls are sexually abused, boys
I
aren't.
knew the statistics. I was in the trenches. But I think in my mind, we were so open. We talked about it so much that how could this have happened?
I'm Angela Williams.
And I'm Katy Sudano.
And I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse.
And I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse.
Welcome to the Voice Up Podcast. So if you're here today and you don't have a clue of what the Voice Up Podcast is, we are breaking the silence in the cycle of child sexual abuse by giving a voice to it, by voicing up on the issue and the topic. So please share this podcast with others. And today we have a really special show. Both of us as mothers and as human beings feel very passionate about helping to prevent child sexual abuse. Because if we can prevent it, Katy, we can save a life.
Absolutely.
Of trauma.
And we need to give a voice to the voiceless. You know, people think that they can't talk about this.
Yes.
Well, come on. We're in 2024. We need to stop with this, oh, it's so embarrassing stuff. Because the reality is, by not talking about it, it keeps everything in the dark and keeps perpetuating this epidemic that we are having.
It festers in the silence. So today, I'm real excited, and I think we're going to pull from our toolbox of being moms, but real excited to talk to our audience about preventing child sexual abuse. So I am a huge advocate, have been for 20 some odd years, and have
you've been in the trenches.
In the trenches.
I'd say more than an advocate. You've been in it. And you've done so much. All of these books are yours that you've done with your son.
This is only a fraction.
Fraction, yep.
So today we're going to talk and kind of dive into a book that I wrote called Tough Talk to Tender Hearts. And Katy, this book to me is one of the most important things because it is such a tough talk to talk to our children about sex, period.
Well, it's scary as a parent. Usually we're like, go talk to your dad, you know.
Yeah. So we offer this book as a free download on our website, and it's a voice up for you. And we'll also have it in a link below. But I really want to talk to you about things that are in this book. And we as mothers hopefully can give you some tips. Hopefully if you have a child or a grandchild, this is a great show for you to watch. And if you can just, share it with those that have children.
Absolutely.
1 in 4 girls, the statistics are all over the place for both boys and girls, but 1 in 3, 1 in 4 is reported of girls, 1 in 6, 1 in 13, 1 in 20, who knows with boys, but only 1 in 10 ever tell. So a lot of children suffer in silence with this.
Yeah.
And so it's so important that we begin to have that tough talk and talk to our kids. So it was uncomfortable for me. I mean, don't you think it's one of the toughest things because you feel like you're going to steal their innocence is kind of the first thought that I had.
It wasn't tough for me, but I had a mentor. Yeah. I wasn't even going to talk to them until, the right age to talk about the birds and the bees. Excuse me. But when I went to your foundation, I walked in and the first thing you told me after we got to know each other a little bit, how many kids do you have? Oh, and you need to have the talk. And I'm like, no, they're like 3. And you're like, let me sit you down. You sat me down and you're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And this was prior to you even, I don't think you had that book yet, but you basically taught me what you wrote in that book.
And it's not one talk. That's one of the first things that I want you to hear me. It's not one talk. It is layered talks, consistent talks over the entire life of the child. And I started with my 2 at age pretty much 1.5 to 2. And we started at bath time. So at bath time, I would give them a washcloth and I would say, we need for you to wash your vagina. So one of the most important things is to teach a child the anatomical names of their body parts. The actual names of their body parts. Your vagina, your penis, your anus. They need to understand that these are biological names for their body parts, anatomical names for their body parts, because so often we give them nicknames.
Oh, I know. I got to tell you.
Okay.
And my sister-in-law.
Got some funny nicknames?
Well, my sister-in-law, I love her, and she's the best, and she's from up north. And I'll never forget when I went, because you taught me to say anatomical. So, sometimes we'd say pee-pee, but generally it was the anatomical. I can't say the
It's
word.
a hard word. Anatomical.
Names for the kids. But I go up to New York, and she's like, "Did you wash your cookie?" And I'm like, "Why would she wash a cookie?" Like, I'm thinking of it, the actual food. She goes, "Katy, I'm talking about her cookie." And I was like, "Oh, that's what you call it? I've never heard it called a cookie before." But I immediately told her what you taught me. And so it's an ongoing joke about the cookie thing. But yeah, I always wondered. Yeah, I think it's cute, and I think most parents think it's cute to nickname it something. But why is it that we shouldn't?
Well, it's so important that we should not, because if a child is violated and they're in a court of law and the only name that they know for their private part is cookie or pocketbook or wee wee or pee pee or hot dog or whatever name that you've made up for it, they are shredded in court. Their credibility is shredded in court when they can't say that Uncle, I hate to use names because everybody,
Uncle so-and-so.
Uncle so-and-so.
Sorry, Uncle so-and-so touched my pocketbook versus Uncle so-and-so touched my vagina. Or Uncle so-and-so put his penis in my vagina. That is a much stronger testimony for that child when they're under a forensic interview.
For child sexual abuse.
Plus, doesn't it make it like this is your private body part? And when you name it something cute like that, doesn't it take away from that that essence of that it's yours and, that you have ownership over it and control over it?
Yeah, and if everybody's got a different name for it, what the heck are we talking about?
Yeah.
And so I really want parents to understand that you got to teach your child from the time that they're 2 years old, not only the proper names of their body parts, but that it's anywhere your bathing suit covers is a real easy way to explain to your child. No one is to touch, look at, see, expose themselves to you any place that a bathing suit covers.
Yep, that's what I use for my girls and Andre. Yeah,
and it's so easy to explain that. And I explain to my children is the only reason that someone should show you, touch, feel, is for health and hygiene. So health. Obviously, when we're going to the doctor, they've got to examine their private parts. Hygiene, when you have to keep your child clean, obviously, but if your child knows that and hears that over and over and over, and some great opportunities for these talks that we need to have consistently throughout a child's life is when you're going to the doctor, when you're going to a checkup, or when your child's sick, or when you're going to the dentist, and let that kind of be a trigger that, okay, we're going to be in the car together. Most drives are 10 to 15 minutes to the doctor. That's ample amount of time to say, "Hi, honey, I want to really reiterate that these are your private parts. No one's to see or touch except for health or hygiene." And ask the question, has anyone asked to look at your private parts? Or has anyone exposed their private parts to you? Or is there anybody in your life that makes you feel uncomfortable? We're not asking these questions, and we're not asking them from a very young age. The average age of sexual abuse is 8 years old, 8, 9 years old. So, and as you know, in the work that I've done, we see as young as infants, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-olds that are being sexually abused. And we're not asking those questions, and we're not almost wanting to hear the answers.
Can I backtrack a little bit? Because you said something before. You said health or hygiene.
Yes.
I think we need to really be careful with the health part because, and the hygiene part for that matter, because if we have a family member that's cleaning them, that could be an okay moment for them to abuse the child, knowing that the parent has that kind of open door policy, number one. And number two, the news it wasn't just, I wish I knew the guy's name, but he was a was he a medical doctor? Well, he was a doctor of some kind who he was the doctor for the gymnastics team.
You're right.
What was his name? But he's the doctor. And I think a lot of those girls, because they're taught, oh, it's okay because he's
a doctor.
And has to physically examine you. He took so so much liberties and advantage on those girls because
and
of
he did
that.
sexually abuse. I mean, you're exactly right, but at least start the conversation. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable or you're not comfortable, but usually you're in the room. Usually you're
or just
you're
tell
with
them there should be another
person
female
in the room.
or person in the room.
Exactly. That's a great
just,
point to make, that somebody else should be in the room when you're being examined. And even that happens to people sexually abuse a child.
Well, even as an adult, like I have another doctor in our office and, he was closing the door for the laser treatments. And I said, when you're in the room with a female, he's a great guy. So don't look him up on YouTube, on Google or anything. But I think he's so into what he was doing.
When people they're not informed.
And they have clothes on, so it's not like they're undressing. But I always said, keep the door cracked if me or the other girls aren't in there.
So that's another good point. If your child is playing with another child or an older child, keep the door open. That's a good rule to have. Mm-hmm. But having continued conversations and letting your child know what a personal boundary is, that this is the place that is yours, and that you have complete control and autonomy over who touches you, what type of affection is shared, and that you can say no. And I don't think we're teaching our children that the power of their no voice, that they can say no. And not only when they say no, they need to come and tell you that I'm not comfortable with this person, or this person did so-and-so that made me feel uncomfortable. And for them to know that they're not going to be in trouble for telling you, nor is that other person going to be in trouble, but they're going to be held accountable. It depends. Yeah, it depends. But just let the child know that the right thing to do is to come and tell you.
Yeah. Well, even my girls, like I have now 16-year-old to 23-year-old girls, and if they're out on a date, or if they're out with friends, or if my 16-year-old is at someone's house, and I'm like, if you ever feel uncomfortable in any way, I don't care what time it is, you call me, we'll get you.
Do you have a safe word? I've heard of safe words. Stop is your safe
They'll
word.
They'll send me a stop sign.
They'll send you a stop sign.
Emoji.
Yeah.
Which means, like, if I call them or something, and I told them I'll keep calling until you answer, but if you send me a stop sign, to other people it means, oh my gosh, stop, Mom. Mm-hmm. But to me that means go get them.
Okay. All right. So I think for our moms or dads listening, it's great to have a safe word.
Yeah, absolutely.
That your kid knows if you're not comfortable with someone, you can say that word, or maybe weave that word in a conversation, and they'll know immediately.
Oh, hold on. Speaking of that, I wanted to make sure I didn't forget this, so you just reminded me. So in the Latin Hispanic community, because I'm partially Hispanic, we are very, as parents, the form that we teach our children respect and greetings and goodbyes is to hug or kiss on the cheek.
Right.
I will never forget when you told me years ago, stop forcing your children to say or do something on a greeting or a goodbye. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my gosh, how can I do that without people,
hurting
getting
their
upset?
feelings.
Yeah. And it actually happened naturally. One of my girls, she just did not feel comfortable with some family member, and she refused to say goodbye and hello. And I'm like, you know what? That's fine. And I just looked at the guy and I was like, she's young and she's...
refused to share affection during those hello and goodbyes. Yeah,
she didn't even want to get near. Yeah, she didn't want to even get near. And some other person in my family got a little upset at me, and I said, you know what? I'm sorry, but this is my child, and I'm going to respect how she's feeling in this moment.
Well, you taught your child boundaries, and that's real important that we teach our children that they don't have to share affection when they're uncomfortable, or they can pick a different way if they don't want to be kissed or hugged. And that's actually another book that's behind you, Katy, is Grant Gets His Shield. And in this story, you're able to read to your child, but Grant has this aunt that slobbers all over him when she kisses him, and he's very uncomfortable with that. He really struggles with how to tell his mom that, but he finally finds the strength to tell his mom, and his mom suggests they do a fist pump. Yeah. So they had a different way to communicate that was comfortable for him. And so these boundaries that we're teaching our child, they're just not for when they're children. They're just not for protecting them from child sexual abuse. They're for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely.
We've got to have strong boundaries to have strong relationships. So we're really building a foundation for them of good health, good emotional health going forward.
Yeah, for sure.
So another thing I wanted to point out as kind of a prevention tip is it's great, like Katy had a safe word, but it's great to have something that your child knows, a plan. Like if your child is uncomfortable or they don't know how to tell you something and they don't know when the right time is, what we used to do is my daughter would put her teddy bear on my bed, on my pillow. So when I saw the teddy bear on my bed pillow, I was like, oh my gosh, she needs to talk to me. Mm-hmm. So I could carve out intentional time that was uninterrupted that I knew I needed to sit my daughter down and have a conversation. So I think it's great to have a plan. I think
yeah, absolutely.
To tell your child.
I got to tell you what we did.
Okay.
And these are all principles that I learned from all these resources that were you at the time.
Thank you.
So this really worked well for us, but I don't know if it'll work for all families. It just happened to work well with us, even though a couple times I'll share was quite uncomfortable. But we chose one night that we had family night. There were no after school activities. There were no, like if they were in baseball or something and they had something, we would work around that, but it was always one night, and usually it was Thursday night. And Thursday night, I have, as you know, 5 children. Try to get 5 little kids to agree on one restaurant. So that was actually a tool for them to communicate and come up with, compromise and come up with a solution to get one restaurant. Once they picked the restaurant, I would make the order and have it delivered to the home. That way I could, just kind of be with them and not focus on dinner. But the food would come and we'd all sit down at the table, and I had a little candle. And wherever the candle landed, so if the candle was in front of Andre, our oldest, he knew that it was his turn to say whatever he wanted to say.
Wow.
No condition. He could tell us something that happened at school, something that he did well, something that he didn't feel comfortable with that he chose to do, or a question or a comment, anything he wanted. The rule was nobody at the table could offer any advice or have any consequences to that or say any comment unless they wanted it. If they wanted advice, then we were allowed to give it. So it worked really well, except for the fact that my son is much older than the youngest girls. So you can imagine one time he shared a very explicit thing that he saw at school.
Right.
And it was the second letter of the alphabet and a third letter word.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm confused, Katy, but okay.
Second letter of the alphabet.
V.
And then
boob. You saw a boob?
No, it's usually referred as a 2-letter thing, and it's oral sex.
Gachha.
Okay, so he
witnessed that.
He
oh my
witnessed
goodness.
that on the bus.
On the bus.
On the back of the bus, and he blurted it out, and I just looked at my husband. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then one of the younger ones says, Mom, what's that? And I'm like, oh, it's when you blow your hair, and it's like a job that somebody does to blow the hair. And that's the only thing I come up. You know what that little girl said?
What?
How did they plug it in on the bus?
Oh.
The hairdryer.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was talking about. And I'm like, okay, maybe we need to set some parameters. But here's the thing. My point is that even as uncomfortable as it was, and we finally ended up telling her exactly what it was to her level of understanding. And of course, I think she was like 6 years old. So you can't really talk about the blatant thing it was. But we explained, that it wasn't appropriate and that that's not done in public and in school and on a bus. But we also, it was a good conversation to have where he could have a bit more maturity in how he
and that's traumatizing. To witness something like that's traumatizing.
Well, he was traumatized for sure because he didn't know what the heck was going on, and he didn't know how to, if he should tell.
Takeaways from that story you just told. One is our children are sexualized everywhere. Our children are sexualized at school. They're sexualized in the media. They're sexualized in the neighborhood. They're sexualized on TV. They're sexualized everywhere. Sex is coming at them everywhere. And the second takeaway I have from that is that you set aside intentional time, and that we understand that we don't, as mothers, I would never want, and I'm a grandmother now. I have a 1 and 3-year-old and one on the way, and I would never want to steal their innocence. So we have to explain things age appropriately for children, of course, but we have to be talking to children about this. We cannot let them navigate this on their own. It's not one talk at puberty.
No, we still talk about stuff. Yeah. And they cringe every time, you know, they make faces or they'll laugh and whatever. But I have to say that a lot of times people are a little shocked at how open we are, but we're open in a respectful, positive manner. We're not crass about it.
Well,
you know?
Our bodies, God created our bodies. They're beautiful images of Him. Yeah. Our sex was created as a beautiful relational between a married couple to enjoy sex, and Satan has perverted it, and Satan has used it to attack our children in horrific ways. So hopefully in this conversation, people will get some aha moments. Oh man, I need to set aside time to talk to my child. I need to explain the anatomical names of their body parts. And here's another really important part, is that a perpetrator will try to keep a child silent because they want to be protected by the child. So if they can keep the child silent and not tell or not disclose what they're doing to them, they will say, this is our little secret. So we have to teach our children the difference between secrets and surprises. And
that's a good one.
Secrets conceal, surprises reveal. So a surprise will be revealed. So we in our household I told my children, I can't protect you if you keep secrets. If you lie to me or keep secrets, I can't protect you. So I think that's a really big point, that in these conversations that we're having, that no one is ever to tell you to keep a secret from me. Yeah. A surprise, just maybe a surprise. We have birthdays coming up, so certainly want that birthday present kept a surprise, but it will be revealed, it will be unwrapped. So even when you're there again, finding these appropriate times that you could have these conversations. When you're going to a birthday party and you're wrapping a present, that's a great time to explain to a child, this is a surprise, and there are secrets and there are differences. Yeah. And you are to always tell me if someone's asked you to keep a secret. And that gives the child, there again, a platform. So I think we're covering some pretty good points here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm kind of.
What else do you got in that book?
I know. I'm strolling through the book and trying to pick out without reading the whole book to our audience.
I want to say, while you're strolling there, I just want to thank you, Angela, for not only putting this invaluable resource out there, but to give it to people to be able to download it for free. Yeah. I mean, that's huge, because I know how much time and effort and money it took for you to do that. So thank you.
So I want to talk, having the talk. A lot of parents want to have one talk at puberty. It's too late, but I want you as a caregiver's parents to really let a child know that you can ask me any question. Sex is complicated, obviously. Sexual abuse is horrific, but that you can ask me any question. So I think that's important to keep that dialogue open and to try to remove, even though we're always kind of have a little bit of embarrassment or shame around the issue, but try to remove that as much as possible for the kids.
Yeah, the more confident you speak on it, the less kind of weird vibes the kids are going to pick up on.
So I want to touch on just a couple of things before we close, but one is really looking at the potential signs of child sexual abuse, because so often children go their whole childhood having suffered. Maybe it was once, maybe it was twice. I know you suffered for 10 years. I suffered for 14 years.
Well, and my son, I mean, he was silent for so long.
Yeah. So we really need to begin to recognize signs and symptoms of child sexual abuse. One, to me, that I've seen in the years that I've been working in this, and I went on, to get my master's in forensic psychology and learned a lot about the trauma, but it's a distinct change in behavior. Yeah. Yeah. And we don't recognize that, or we want to put it off as maybe it's puberty, or maybe there's, they have friend problems, or maybe it's a girlfriend problems, or whatever it is. But that distinct change in behavior, if that would be an alarm in parents' minds, and just know that, hey, my child acts differently today than they did yesterday.
So I have to interrupt you on that. I have to ask you because you know what, this happened to my son.
I know.
And
so
there
sorry.
was, me too, trust me. There was a distinct behavioral change. I knew something happened to him. My husband knew something happened to him. Even my mom was like, what's going on with Andre? It was so drastic. Like, it was so in our faces. And yet, honestly, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
We asked him, we gave him safe space. We've had these conversations about private parts and talking and all this stuff. And yet the whole time we're having this one night a week thing, the whole time he had been going through horrific abuse.
So children are so ashamed. And oftentimes the perpetrators put so much fear in the child for telling that they are locked down and silent.
Yeah.
But your son did eventually tell you.
He did.
And,
he was 23.
Had you not laid that groundwork
Yeah.
of knowing that he could come to you and tell you, and I know you were doing the work of
I was.
advocacy.
Yeah. I mean, I knew the signs, but that's what I'm saying. Like,
did you take him to counseling?
I tried.
You tried.
We tried, and
Yeah. And sometimes people disclose at their own time, in their own way, and we can't force it. And it's horrific that it happens. And none of this that I'm teaching or telling is foolproof.
Right.
None of you, if you follow my A, B, C, D, E, F, G, my child's never going to be sexually abused. That's not the case.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. But hopefully we can reduce the risk by having these conversations, and we can reduce the risk by being more educated on the issue and on the signs and symptoms.
Well, yeah, and speaking on that, I have 4 girls, and I watch them like a hawk. Never in my wildest dreams, never would I have thought that anything like that would have happened to my son.
Well, that's the stereotype, right?
I know.
Girls are sexually abused, boys
and I
aren't.
knew the statistics. I was in the trenches. But I think in my mind, we were so open. We talked about it so much that how could this have happened?
So there's more signs and symptoms that we want to look at. The change in behavior, obviously. But if a child starts bedwetting, they start having nightmares, they feel uncomfortable around someone, you can tell they're edgy. The child won't look you in the eye. I mean, there's several just signs and symptoms that as a mother or as a parent or as a grandparent, you need to follow your instinct. Your intuition. Like you had a great instinct that something bad had happened.
Well, we knew he had night terrors.
Okay.
He stopped doing his sports. He just was doing video games all the time. And I think worst of all is that's when the anger started.
Another telltale sign is when the child is acting out inappropriately sexually, beyond the age that they should know these things. Either using conversation, talking about sex, and a lot of times children are exposed to pornography, so they're seeing things during the sexual acts that they shouldn't be seeing. Often there's a change in their school grades, a drop in their grades, a drop in their mood, anxiety, depression. All of this is in the book, so I'm not going to go through each detail, but what you want to know is that pay attention to it and ask again. And I'm sure you kept asking even through his 23 when he finally told. And
actually, no, I stopped.
You stopped asking?
His perpetrator was pregnant, and they announced that they were going to have a boy. And I think that's what triggered him to speak out, and maybe he was afraid for the boy.
So taking a disclosure, I just want to touch on that for a moment. When someone, be it a child or an adult, discloses child sexual abuse, they need to hear that I believe you, and this was not your fault, and I'm a safe person for you to tell. And when a child is young, that disclosure, or even when they're older, obviously, we would hope that people would take action and report this as a criminal act, that they would report it, and there would be accountability and justice. So what you want to do with the child to make sure that you're not leading the child is do reflective listening. So if a child says, so-and-so touched my private parts, you would repeat back what they said. So I'm hearing you say that so-and-so touched your private parts. Tell me more.
Yeah.
And keep the child talking, and as much as you can, write down everything the child says, and then immediately call the authorities, and I would get in contact with the Child Advocacy Center, who could actually do a forensic interview. But what you're doing is you're preserving the integrity of that disclosure so that they have a chance in a court of law to get justice.
Yeah.
And if they don't get that justice in a court of law, they could go to a court of civil law and get justice. So disclosure is very important. And as an adult, I remember telling people, not a lot, you don't tell just anybody, but even telling a doctor in an exam one time, and they just glossed over it. They didn't say that, I'm sorry that happened to you. They didn't say,
Don't they have to?
Now, back then,
report it?
Things have changed a lot now, and I wasn't a child, I was an adult, but just not having the compassion that I felt like was needed. And a lot of people that I've talked to don't really know what to say. So they say nothing, which leaves you kind of holding the bag, so to speak. So I just want to encourage, if you have a friend or a family member, or, if you're a teacher and a student discloses, like, you need to know how to take that disclosure, but you need to take it with compassion because they're opening up their heart and soul. We know how hard it is to break that silence, especially for the first time. So
absolutely.
I do hope that your son will come on the show and kind of share that experience.
I hope so.
With him.
He said he wanted to, and then he's like,
it's
give
terrifying.
Some time.
It's absolutely terrifying. So again, I just really want our viewers to go to voiceupforyou.com, and we will definitely put the link below. But this is a free download, so please download it, share it. I have plenty of resources at angelasvoice.com. I've just clicked the resource page, and I really know that it has to start with a conversation. It has to start with asking your child if there's anyone that makes them feel uncomfortable. The statistics are 93% of the time it's someone the child knows, loves, and trusts. So guess what? Love and trust them. So,
and I think too, I don't know why this kind of downloaded just now, but if you're in the PTA or PTO of a school, I think this is in desperate need to be in the school counselors, because I know a lot of my girls' friends have disclosed issues to their school counselors because they feel like they've known each other for so many years. I think it's a lot of a safe place. If you're a PTA or PTO, just give it to the school counselors.
Yes. So Tough Talk to Tender Hearts. We are so excited that you've been with us today. And please share this podcast. This information is life or death for a child and for a survivor. So thank you for following Voice Up for You. And we want to give a shout out to Mesmerized Media, who makes this podcast possible.
Thank you.
Any word of inspiration to close us out with, Katy?
Well, keep talking.
Keep talking. That's
keep
good.
Keep talking.
And keep having that tough talk.
Keep having that tough talk. It's weird, but there's so many moments in life that you can put your phones down and recognize those moments and take advantage of those moments for the protection of your children, for our future.
Thank you. Thank you for helping us voice up for the voiceless. Please follow us in social media at Voice Up for You, and we're going to keep voicing up here. Thanks, Katy.
Thank you. Thanks, Angela.